You have to justify work now. If you're crossing prohibited boundaries and you're doing live work, you have to justify it. Me and Bill justified nothing, I guarantee you, 1984. You know, we would replace live components in a circuit. You know, take out a contactor and put in a new one while everything else is running. No PPE, no gloves, nothing. Just a screwdriver with a bunch of electrical tape wrapped around it. Who else has done that? Yeah. Yeah. And we can't do that anymore. I never worked at a place where I could justify live work. No place. I worked at Bemis Company making plastic for Charmin toilet paper. The world won't end if I shut that machine down. I worked at a ceramic floor tile plant in Bloomfield, Indiana. The world's not going to die if there's not ceramic floor tile coming out of there. I worked for TRW making circuit boards for Chrysler cars. The world won't end if I shut that machine down. But in 1984, the world would end if we quit making widgets at that foundry. You know, we were like brain surgeons. We'd take out a long screwdriver and take those wires off. I'd say, Bill, hold that. It's hot. Don't touch the shiny part. And, you know, we'd hold that one. And, you know, then we'd like, take it out. Okay, I need to, we'll do a transplant. Okay, try it. You know, we don't do that anymore. Okay? You have to justify doing live work. There's 3 ways to do it. If it's a greater hazard, to shut it off and do it de-energized. Anybody here work at the airport? How about a hospital? Got somebody there? You folks can maybe use greater hazards as an excuse somewhere. If you work at a hotel, you might be able to. Like in this hotel. If you have to work on the fire pump circuit on this hotel, we don't shut fire pumps off in the middle of the night. You know, we don't shut off fire systems because I want to work at de-energized. You know, those things are hooked directly to God. We don't shut those off for anything. Maybe Lucas Oil Stadium, you know, Sunday night game, we're beating the Patriots' butt, and it's full of people. So, you know, you're not going to shut the lights off in there because the electrician wants to change a breaker. It's because that's a greater hazard, right? Most of us can't prove greater hazard. Infeasible. OSHA used an example of a chemical processing plant that can't be shut down. I can't tell you what OSHA would consider infeasible. It's not very much, has been my experience. And not very much, except this. When you're measuring voltage, when you're doing live troubleshooting, when you're verifying that that circuit's turned off, it's infeasible. You got to use your voltmeter. It's infeasible otherwise. So we could justify it with that. It's also justifiable if it's under 50 volts. If it's under 50 volts, as long as there's no arc flash potential or some crazy, I was talking to someone with a big airline, I can't tell you, United, and yesterday in Chicago, and they have like 400 hertz DC systems, low voltage, and you know, there's got to be some hazard. They have lots of arc, never mind, and it's a problem. So just because it's under 50 volts doesn't mean it's safe. There could also be some issues. Depends, you know, depending on what else is there. So that's how you justify it. But you have to justify it. If OSHA walks into your facility and you have a person in a control panel and it's live, even if they're wearing PPE and it's live and you're replacing components in this panel, OSHA doesn't have to send an electrical engineer in there to tell that, to walk up and ask you a question. Hopefully don't walk too close. But they'll say, can you justify what that person is doing over there and doing it live? You make widgets here. How can you justify this live work? So expect a citation. And you have to justify these things. Now, qualified person. Everyone that accesses electrical enclosures has to be qualified. When I worked in Terre Haute and another place, I'm not going to tell you where, we made Charmin toilet paper plastic over at, and I was working on a DC motor, 400 horsepower DC motor, electronic drive. I opened up the cabinet to work on it inside there. Of course, I'm not wearing PPE because this was like 22 years ago. And in the cabinet, it was the size of a refrigerator, it's a big cabinet, is a igloo cooler. And I'm thinking, maybe the maintenance department has tools. No, it was a tuna sandwich. And I don't like tuna, so I put it back. If it had been ham and cheese, it would have been different. But it was tuna, so I put it back. And the operator comes over and wants to know why the fat maintenance guy's in his lunch bucket. And I said, why is your lunch bucket in my cabinet? He said, your cabinet's air conditioned. It made sense. He stored his lunch in our electronic cabinet because we air conditioned it. The rest of the building, no, not so much. You know, if you've ever been in a plastic extrusion plant in July in Indiana, a little sticky there. It can be a little sticky. And so the guy stored his bucket, lunch bucket in there. So make a note. No lunch buckets in control panels. That shouldn't be too hard. We can pull that off. Does this sound familiar? You work at a place and maybe in the back you've got a raw materials area with a conveyor. Sometimes the raw material operator overloads a conveyor or the grinder or something, and it trips out. You ever hear that term, tripped out? When the motor trips out, it's tripped out an overload relay at the bottom of the motor starter. And it does that because the operator asks the motors to do too much work. And it pulls too much current and trips off. That's how we keep motors from burning up. Now, what's supposed to happen is this. Gets on the phone and calls maintenance and says something like, send Bubba out here. I've tripped out again. So the maintenance guy, me, waddles out there. And, I'm making $2 more an hour than that guy. I open up the panel, and I reset a button inside. I close the panel. And because I'm a maintenance man, it's required of me to say something nasty to the operator, right? Hey, you dumb, but you know, look. And then I go back for coffee and donuts. Familiar? That was my job. That was my job. Now, here's what happens. The operator sees what button I pushed to reset, right? So next time he's like, I tripped out again. I'm going to grab no, I'm not going to grab the phone. I hate that fat son of a gun. I'm not going to call him next time because he always says something nasty. I saw what he's doing in there. He's just pushing a button. He makes $2 more an hour for pushing a button, and I just push the button. So he resets it, and off he goes. He does that for 5 years, and everything's fine. No one gets hurt. But one day, that operator is in a hurry, sticks his hand in there real quick and doesn't realize that the wire is just a fraction of an inch from his knuckles, might just have 480 volts on him. And he gets zapped and doesn't survive. Does that sound familiar? That happens all the time. Operators cannot open a control panel for any reason unless they're a qualified person, unless they've had all this training and they've been determined to be qualified by the employer. So we have to stop that. I know what you're thinking. We have to do that because we don't have Bubba on third shift. We can't call the guy to come out and reset it. We've got to do it ourselves. Well, get rid of the hazard. Put the button on the outside of the panel. You can do that. They've got extensions for that. Little plastic extensions that normally break in about a year. They also have electronic motor starters now. They also have European-style motor starters. They also have timed motor starters that when it trips out, after the operator trips it out, it'll reset itself in about 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever you set it at. Then the operator doesn't have to call anybody. And no one has to be exposed. So your goal needs to be remove that hazard. Make it so no one has to open that panel, especially the operator. Okay? So make sure that this happens. We just can't let them in there anymore. And if you got a situation like, Columbus, Indiana, for instance, or Ohio, their water department has remote pumping stations, and people have to reset motor starters. Well, they've trained them all to do this. They have trained them all to reset these motor starters, and they've become qualified people. They can't do anything else, but they've been trained to use PPE and do that. So if you got to do that, you have to train the people. Electrical safety program. A written electrical safety program directs the activities of people working around electrical hazards. Teaches them what to do with PPE and other things. I got some tips on electrical safety programs. I have seen some good ones and I have seen some really bad ones. Good ones are short, simple, make it something that people can read and understand. I was in maintenance for 10 years. If you have a 200-page electrical safety policy, I'm not going to read it, right? A big client of ours is Lockheed. They have an 18-page electrical safety program. 18 pages, and that's it, and it's beautiful. Not a wasted word in there. Other people have 200 and 300 pages dedicated, and they cut and paste a bunch of stuff out of OSHA books and out of 70E books, and well, that's in those books. Leave them in their books. You don't have to just cut and paste. Make sure that someone from the electrical department helps the safety department write this. Okay? Keep it short and sweet, something we'll all read. Do not let your attorney write it. Okay? Ever. Ever. If attorney has to write it, then you write a book report on it, and you make it 12 pages long. All right? So keep it short and sweet. If you want to see what electrical safety program is supposed to look like, you can go to our website, give us an email. We can send you samples that we found out in the industry that are good. We also write these for people. If you need help writing your own, it's a service that we offer. Energized electrical work permits. I love energized electrical work permits. It protects everybody, especially Bubba. Let's say that you've been called out and you work at some kind of widget factory, and the boss says, hey, the big widget machine here ain't working right. Most of it's working, but this one little part's not working right. Well, take a look at it. So you're the maintenance person. You show up with all your cool tools and all your stuff, and you have all your PPE on, right? And you're doing troubleshooting. You can use your voltmeter, and you're measuring stuff. Okay. Now, what is this called? Diagnostics, right? This is the diagnostic part. Oh, there's the problem right here. It's a bad contactor. That's why that one heating zone is not working. It's a bad contactor. We have to replace this contactor. And your boss says, we can't shut down. You got to keep going because the world needs widgets. So you have to replace that live. And you say, oh, nay, nay. I cannot do that unless I have an energized work permit. Because remember, we had the training that I'll get fired if I do it without an energized work permit. And boss says, yeah, that's right. Let's fill one out. On that energized work permit, and there's samples in the back of the 70E book, you have to put your name, and his name, or her name, and you have to put the voltage hazards, the arc flash potential hazards, the PPE that you're going to use, and there's even a box there for why you have to do it live. And you better have a good story. Then you have to sign it, the boss has to sign it, and somebody from the safety department has to sign it. And what happens is, somebody's not signing. I wouldn't sign it. Who all here has safety in their title? Would you be signing it? If the world needs widgets? I don't think so. So what ends up happening, hey, it's not as important as the supervisor thought it was. Because if the supervisor's going to sign off on this, it's probably not going to happen. So energized work permits protect people. You know, us folks in maintenance, I was in maintenance 10 years, and we're kind of like a street gang within your factory, right? We all wear the same colors, and we all hang together, and is there a more cantankerous bunch in the group than us? We don't want to take any crap from anybody, especially safety folks, and especially the supervisor. But we're something else too. We're risk takers sometimes, aren't we? Generally, maintenance people tend to take more risks than their supervisors know about. We need to stop doing this, but sometimes, I might be, well, hell, I'll work on this live. Let's fill this energized work permit out. Then the boss says, nope, I'm not signing it. So it doesn't get done. So it's kind of taking the decision out of our hands and putting it in the hands of adults. And they say, no, you're not doing this live. Not if my name's got to be on it. I just built a new house. I'm not going to risk my house and everything for signing this, so it doesn't get done. So highly recommend energized work permits. And there are samples that you can use in the back of the 70E book. You can create your own and require whoever to sign it, but it really gets a lot of work, does away with a lot of live work. There is an exemption for diagnostics work. So when you're doing voltage checks, when you're doing troubleshooting, you don't need an energized work permit. Only when you come to repair. So you can do all the troubleshooting you want, no permit. But when it comes to repair, you need a permit.